Hello,
Hey everyone,
everybody.
welcome to Ham Radio. We're hosts. I'm Dylan,
I'm Taylor.
and we got some pretty crazy news this week that came up. At least one of them came up kind of all of a sudden. Another one is one we talked about last time, which was we did talk about it last time actually. We're just
Yeah,
talking about it again.
they just announced
Um,
it.
I thought we talked about it last time though. I remember talking about the controller.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
We
because they
we
they
talked.
just like the initial thing had just come out.
Mhm. So we have a few things to talk about there as far as Nintendo goes. We have the new MacBook Pros release. That's pretty cool. I got a few things to say about that. Um, Really exciting though.
Mm-hmm.
Few other Nintendo related things. We have the Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl to talk about as well. We have a few other topics that we might get to here and there, but pretty much like, Apple and Nintendo focused this stream. Maybe talk about the Steam Deck. We'll see how far we get.
Yeah.
But yeah, to start out, I think we're going to start out with the MacBook release. So,
Let's do it.
Apple on Monday released two new MacBooks. There is a 14-inch and a 16-inch model. And before they even got to the hardware, at least the physical hardware, they started talking about the new M1 chips. So
Hey
they
Dylan,
started.
real quick,
What's that?
before we get too far into this, we're getting from chat that you are a tiny bit quiet.
I'm quiet. Okay, I will turn myself up. 1 second.
They want more music.
How is that? Does that sound better?
Do you have noise
We'll
suppression?
we'll find out. We'll find out, I guess. More? You might need to turn me up in Streamlabs because I did turn myself down.
Okay.
I don't know how high my volume is there, but keeping it level might be good.
One quick second while we adjust some of our settings here.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Noise suppression is on. Do I need to turn him up on here?
I can also try and move the mic a little bit closer to myself here. Can't get it that much closer though.
I mean, that sounds good on my end.
Okay. How's the sound of chat out there? Sound okay? Move my mic a little bit. It's not too bad. Okay. Still a bit quiet. How loud am I in Streamlabs right now?
Let me turn you up a decent bit. Try now.
Okay. Let's see if that works out there. Still a bit quiet. You two are the same in the chat. Okay, cool. Awesome. So, back to what we're talking about. So now, basically, we had the M1 chip, which Apple announced, I believe it was last year. Yeah, I think it was last year they announced the M1 chip, which is a brand new silicon. They're departing from Apple, and they're kind of wanting to do their own thing. This is not... it's tough to compare a little bit to normal desktop class processors. We'll kind of go over that in a bit of how they compared it to different things, because this is an ARM style processor. So the set of instructions it gets is very different. So if you're looking at benchmarks between like an i7 and a M1 or an AMD Ryzen 5900X, like score, like synthetic benchmarks, you can't really compare those. However, what they did do, which was smart, and I wouldn't think that they're stupid, is they compared application performance, because really
Right.
that's what matters, and it's what you get a machine for usually. It's a tool.
It's
for
not
the
as
most part.
it's not just like, okay, like it's like the difference between driving a car and putting it on a dyno. Like, yeah, maybe it makes 400 horsepower on a dyno, but how does it actually feel to drive? How is it actually
Yeah.
like in real world scenarios?
And that's the thing. That's where the PC enthusiast thing comes in, of like, you're just adding more horsepower to it. You're doing this because it's fun.
Right.
There's a difference between that and a laptop that's mostly meant for productivity, but Apple's viewpoint, creativity. Like,
Yeah.
that's their whole thing.
Right.
And it's kind of what they've gotten back to here. But anyways, talking about the chips. So I kind of wanted to go over like what the M1 was. I don't think we've talked about it here on our channel at all. But basically, the M1 is an 8-core CPU. This is going to be a lot of information that's going to be similar to how they discuss their phones, because the phones, the A series chips, are also ARM chips. They just don't. They just are fine with passive cooling. Oh, this one is actually passively cool too. Basically, think of the original M1 as like a much bigger iPhone CPU.
It's very similar to the like a beefy iPad Pro CPU, isn't it? Because when they were first like when they sent out the developer kits for people to develop things for the new OS and the architecture, it was just an iPad Pro chip put in a Mac Mini. That's what their like developer kits were iPad Pro chips. It wasn't even their new silicon, so very similar.
What happened is that they just put the M1 in an iPad,
right?
Because that's in the iPad Pro now. So they're kind of trying to unifying it, which is cool for App Store stuff. But we can kind of go over that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the M1 was an 8-core CPU. It had 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. So what that means is they kind of split it down the middle of like, we want it to be able to do things, but we also want to conserve battery life as much as possible and reduce the thermal conductivity of it, like basically not make it as hot by adding those efficiency cores in to kind of balance it out.
Right.
With that, they accomplished fully passive cooling on the laptop, which is really cool.
In the MacBook Air.
No pun intended. Yes, yeah, in the MacBook Air specifically, and they still sell that. Like the M1 is still a great chip. So it you can configure it up to 16 gigs of RAM, and it had 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, which is really good. So basically how it works with a lot of that stuff is what the board and the processor can support. So that was basically the height of Apple's first attempt of what can we put into this machine and how can we conserve battery life as much as possible, considering they couldn't actively cool it.
Right.
So it's like a marvel in and of itself, especially for anybody who's like a student or something like that. Like that $1,000 machine is amazing.
Yep.
One downside that sucks, and it is CPU limited, you could only have one external display on that. The M1 suffered from I/O issues, and in that way, it could not deliver the speeds necessary to drive more than one external display. That was even with like the laptop closed, it could still only go to one display. It was like software locked, I think, just because there wasn't enough data being able to be transferred. Anyways, so that's kind of the M1. It was amazing for what it was. It is now very much outclassed.
Right.
Granted, at a starting price of double the price, but we'll also get into that here in a second.
Yeah, it definitely still has its place on the market, but it's in a different class.
A completely different class at this point. Yep.
Right. Think of it as like the i3 or the Ryzen 3, and then the new M1 Pro would be like the Ryzen 5000. Although, getting into GPUs and stuff later, but that like same like improvement, the scaling of that technology.
Yep. Pretty much the exact same scale. Yeah, you could do it that way because the pricing kind of goes over that a little bit here too.
Yeah.
What's cool about this in particular is like, to my knowledge, I don't think Intel makes a laptop. So it's very much one of those things where Apple has full control over its machine. It has.
Right. They've always done it that way.
I shouldn't say full control because they do have to contract out things like for the display and the RAM and stuff like that. But as far as like the brain and the hardware, they have like pretty much full control over like the shell and everything like that, how it's designed. So it's really cool. So now the successor to the M1 is the M1 Pro. So it is, instead of an 8-core CPU, it is a 10-core CPU. Looking at the specs here, I had something here for that. 1 second. So yeah, so it's up to 10-core CPU. We'll go over kind of what the pricing is for the base model and stuff like that, because basically they binned it. So there's some lower cored ones. So up to 10-core CPU on the M1 Pro, up to 16-core GPU, up to 32 gigs of unified memory, and up to 200 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth. So that's amazing. Really, really cool. Something I learned about unified memory too that's really cool is that, your graphics card has VRAM, and then you have your system memory, which is basically it's just RAM.
Right.
So you have both those two things, but they both work independently. I know you think you know where this is going with the unified memory. There's something else that's cool about it though. So instead of the GPU needing to send a signal through the board up the bus to the processor and basically get that instruction set sent out, and then the processor, it is very close to the RAM, so it's like the shortest amount of distance traveled, needs to get information from there. So now the whole thing is on one chip, and that was the same with the M1. This is no different from the M1, but this is kind of how unified memory works. So with that up to 32 gigs, that's not 32 gigs like split in half, and it's just like 1616. It's dynamically allocated to what process needs to happen.
So if you're doing a super CPU intensive task, it could take 31 of those 32 gigs and just be running your display with the GPU cores, so it can move it back and forth as to how the computer needs to use it.
Yeah, so depending on the instruction set, how much it wants to have in reserve kind of thing. My best bet is that the way that would be simplest to run it is to just grab RAM when needed for video and then keep most of it in system memory, or like I said before, like splitting in half and then like going one way or the other depending on what's needed would actually probably be the simplest way. I don't know how it's done, but yes, you are correct. You could, in theory, like all-wheel drive systems, put all power to one wheel if you needed to. Yeah. Really, really cool about unified memory. So yeah, up to 32 gigs on the M1 and then up to 200 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. That is wild. I forgot the comparison that was made.
Yeah,
so
it was like
look it up here.
It was like 30 or 40 gigs per second is what normal system memory is, and then I think like high-end GPUs can get I think it was close to 200, and we're talking professional GPUs.
Yep. So the theoretical bandwidth of DDR5 at 6400 megahertz. Granted, this is not available publicly and everything like that. So DDR5 at 6400 megahertz is, oh, that's interesting, is 51.2 gigabytes per second theoretical bandwidth. Now, theoretical is never necessarily the case, because have you seen a USB 2.0 drive operate at 200 megabytes a second?
I barely see them go past 10.
I didn't think so. That's the theoretical maximum of USB 2 is 200 megabytes per second. Never happens, but that's what it is.
Right. But that's also DDR5 at like super fast speed. So that's like the next generation of system memory. Not even what you have in your high-end PCs now. That's like a couple years down the road. And that's
absolutely
a fourth of what this is offering in theoretical maxes.
In theoretical maxes, that's you're absolutely right. Not to mention, that's if you only allocate like, let's say 8 gigs to system memory, you have 24 gigs allocated to VRAM. That's a 3090, right? That has 24 gigs. Yeah, that's insane. Now, like I said before, not comparing against hardware, because obviously that hardware is going to do something much different. But as far as the capacity is concerned, it's wild how fast it is. Because, I mean, GDDR6X is going to be faster. 100% going to be faster. But if you need that VRAM headroom, or RAM headroom, like for, I think DaVinci's Resolve needs at least 32 gigs to run something in it. There's a certain requirement there. But there are certain applications that are like, you need 24 gigs to run this, or you need 32 gigs to run this. So
that's why editing PCs are normally like 64 gigs and up. Like, if you're doing professional editing, that's what you do.
Yeah, my buddy has like 128 gigs in his system, and he's a professional, like, videographer kind of thing. Like, he needs it. Like, it's necessary. So that's the M1 Pro. So in the marketing material, so the GPU, or actually in the newsroom article, the M1 Pro is 70% faster CPU performance than the M1, which is insane. I didn't say actually what the performance and efficiency cores was actually. So the M1, right, 8-core CPU, half and half efficiency to performance. The M1 Pro is a 10-core CPU 8 performance cores and 2 efficiency cores. So that's why 70% more performance. They're allocating more power and more performance to that processor. And we'll go over power here in a little bit because it's actually staggering when you look at the graphs, what it actually is, and what power it's consuming. So yeah, M1 Pro. It got all of, 2 minutes before it got outclassed again. The M1 Max.
Yeah.
So M1 Max, there's not a ton to talk about this other than it's just an M1 with a bigger die. And that's something to mention here too. So like the M1 is like a 4x4 square. Let's say it's like a 4x4 square. The M1 Pro, look at my pictures here really quick. That's the wrong shot. The M1 Pro is more like a 5x8 square. So it's like more of a rectangle.
Yep.
And then the M1 Max is more like a 10x10 square. So like it's basically the die just keeps getting bigger as it puts into it. It's not like it's Intel where it's like all the same size and you're getting more power out of that. They're just increasing the size and increasing the amount of things they can stuff in there.
And somehow still able to cool it.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, it's because, and we'll go into this here in a second, it's not using that much wattage.
Mm-hmm.
At all. Yeah. So the M1 Max, the differentiating factor between the Max and the Pro is it's the exact same cores. Actually, the CPU is pretty much identical. And with that, the single core performance between the M1 Pro and Max is nearly identical.
Mm-hmm.
Like single core performance is the same because it's just using that one good performance core to get that result. But it allows for more GPU cores up to 32, and it doubles the memory bandwidth from 200 to 400 gigabytes per second. It might be gigabits, but yeah, it's basically doubling the memory bandwidth, which is insane.
So that's only available on the M1 Pro, or no, on the M1 Max, not the M1 Pro.
Yes. So yeah, basically that. And keep in mind, like, to get that theoretical maximum, you do need the 64 gigs of memory. But basically, they're putting faster memory in the M1 Max over the Pro in general. I just don't know the numbers of, like, if you get a 32 gig model on the M1 Pro, or on the M1 Max, rather. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much the difference between the processors. And then they started talking about the laptop. So there's a lot of different random specs here. I probably won't hit them all, to be honest, because there's a lot. But it essentially can be boiled down to Apple went into the past to their golden child 2015 MacBook and then just redid it, basically. Like, it's not a one-to-one, but like they brought back MagSafe, which is amazing. They added the ports you needed. It's a 16:10 display, which is interesting. But they kind of just went through and undid a lot of what they did the past few years with their MacBooks.
Yep.
Which is amazing. Actually, I'll go through this before I go through price. So the M1 Pro, so a lot of these specs, when it says up to, especially in that marketing material, is usually attributed to like the maxed out Max with the 64 gigs of memory. So it can do up to 20 streams of 4K ProRes video playback and up to 7 streams of 8K ProRes video playback. So for you creative professionals that are working like DaVinci's Resolve, or I think these were with Final Cut specifically, but like Final Cut Pro, workflow, you can do a lot with these things.
It's insane.
That display comment I had before, I've only one external display. So the M1 Pro does up to, I think it's 3 displays. It's either 2 or 3 displays. And then let me actually make sure of that here really quick. Up to, wait. Oh yeah, the HDMI has that on there. It does up to 2 external displays with up to 6K resolution at 60 hertz. So that's what the M1 Pro does. The M1 Max does up to 4 displays. With a caveat, it's kind of weird. So it does like 3 displays, but then a TV.
Yeah, it was three Pro Display XDRs and then 1 4K TV.
Yes, yeah, because I think the Pro Display XDRs had probably more color and stuff attributed to them, so therefore more data. So, Yeah, so the external display issue is solved. I was talking to somebody at work about that, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I would like to go test M1 stuff, but like, they don't even do two displays. So like, what's the point?" And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
And it's not even for like personal use. Like, sure, if you just use a laptop and one display, like you're fine.
right.
It's for work. We give people two 24-inch displays, and where that's not changing. So
No,
we need
yeah,
to
no.
support
Honestly,
more than
like productivity tasks with two displays, as I'm now finding out, is so much better. Like
yeah.
it is near unbeatable. So
Yep.
I understand not wanting to get a product just because it can't do multiple displays.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like the MacBook Air, especially as it stands now, is the product for the college student. And that's not to say it's in a bad light at all. It's literally like it's portable. It has amazing battery life. It's fanless. So if
Hmm.
you're in like a lecture, like it's not going to ramp up or anything like that because it can't. And if you have like one monitor in your dorm room, like
Right.
you're only going to have one. It's small.
Hmm.
Like it's a perfect machine for that, honestly. Um, ProRes display. My goodness. So excited about that. If you
Yeah.
don't know what ProRes is, it's basically 120 hertz. It's up to
Go to your
120 hertz.
nearest Apple store, pick up an iPad Pro, and touch the screen, and you'll
Yes.
understand.
Yes. Yeah, it's just a higher refresh rate display, and what's cool about it is to save battery life. It's dynamically allocated. So you know how like your computer monitor might be at 144 hertz or whatever. That's running all the time. Oh, it's a roadie. She
The
is exploring.
roadie. She wants the pumpkins. Hi, roadie. Hi, roadie. Poke, poke.
Roadie cam. um. So let's see
Yep.
here. Yeah, we're talking about displays. So like my monitor is 165 hertz display. It's running that all the time. Now, it's not a problem really because it's not running on battery. But when you move to a laptop, you're on battery. That's kind of the point of it, is to be portable.
Right.
So when you're on battery, you don't want it to be refreshing that often when it's not doing anything. So it'll dynamically allocate to be able to conserve battery life, which is really cool.
That's super cool.
120 hertz display, 1000 nits sustained brightness, which is wild. Oh yeah, something I didn't talk about too. The screen is a mini LED display. So thank goodness for not OLED, because laptops with OLED tend to burn in pretty badly because, you know, there's always a dock. In
Right.
Mac's case, there's always a Windows start key for Windows case. Like there's a lot of things. Your icons are just there.
Yep.
So unless like you're changing Windows a lot back and forth, like it'll eventually burn in.
Yeah.
So mini LED is really cool to see. Um, I think my favorite part is that we finally get a 1080p camera.
Uh-huh.
I Apple, you know,
It
guys,
did
you
it
did
did
it.
cost you a camera bump though.
Is there a camera bump on it?
Yep. There's a notch.
Well, there's a notch.
That's what I meant. It
Okay, yes,
cost you a notch.
yeah, there is a notch. I'm not sure why there's a notch. It doesn't really make sense, but I'm not mad about it. I'm
Yeah,
fine about it.
it
Like,
is become so like normal with
mhm,
iPhones and everything to have a notch. It fits. Um
yeah,
One thing to keep in mind too is that the space that the notch is taking up is usually just in the top of the status bar. So
yep,
like it's not even going to cut into a window that you have open because that screen space has already been taken up. It's not like they black out the entire top of the screen. So you're not losing any screen real estate. And if you go into full screen, it is that 16 by 10 like you're talking about. So
mhm,
it's just going to black off the top bar of the screen,
yep.
which
One
is
thing I
it's
was
fine.
Yeah, one thing I was worried about with that is like if the notch, like if the mouse couldn't go behind it and you would just get stuck there in the corners. But you had to think they thought of that, right? And I
Yeah.
think they did. Because I saw something on Twitter the other day. Can't remember if it was an Apple engineer. Somebody was like, "Yeah, you can put the mouse behind like the top of it. Like it's fine. Like it'll work.
Yeah.
Like you can't click anything there, obviously, but like that would be a major annoyance to me. Like,
If
oh,
it
my
got
mouse got
stuck.
stuck in a crevice on
Yeah.
the screen, kind of thing."
uh yeah. No, this seems like
But yeah,
a crazy cool computer with bonkers specs. I
yes.
can't wait to see how it stacks up and how they actually um, keep improving this architecture.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the I/O real quick on this guy.
Oh
So
yeah. No, I
you,
was getting to that. We're like one away
uh
from
huh,
IO.
okay,
Uh, so one away. So the other thing that's really small is they improved the speakers, which is really cool. I just like the design of it, the way they showed it. So
hmm
there's speakers along, like normal MacBook speakers are really good. So like on the side they have the speakers, but they opened up the top and bottom grill
hmm
so that the speaker has like free motion to
right.
move, and so there's like 60% more bass
Yeah, it can move that much more air when they actually fire.
up and down, and so because it can be upwards and down firing now,
Yep.
so you just get more sound. Anyways, that's the only thing I wanted to bring up before we talk about ports here.
All right, let's pour out the ports.
Sure. I find it hilarious on their marketing page for this. There's no text. It's just showing the ports.
Yep.
If you just scroll down, it's just like ports.
Ports. We put ports on it.
Yeah.
People like ports.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to talk about ports?
Um. So sure. First of all, big port. Um, Magsafe Charging is back, which is
Thank
great.
goodness. My
Um,
gosh.
I can't believe that they took that away. That was the best thing about my old MacBook, and like, yeah, it just works. It just works. I wonder if they will come out with a 90-degree cable for it. I'll be curious to see.
It's currently it's a braided cable, and it's I think it comes with an adapter actually for USB-C as well.
Right,
For MagSafe, yeah.
right. But like the 90-degree MagSafe connectors that they made for certain generations.
I don't know actually. I'll
No,
have to look that up. No. Remember, I have not been like the most I've gotten into Macs was like during the 2016 time. I think it was on the tail end of 2015 for their stuff. I just don't think I've seen one before.
this.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Okay. Why is that? What makes it different?
It's a 90-degree connector instead of straight.
Yeah. No, I know, but like I feel like I would pull that out more often than a straight on cable.
So you think that, and I would think that too. But when you have a laptop anywhere besides flat surface, for example, your lap, and you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there, and you've got it, usually you rest it like either on your legs or in between your legs,
I see what you're
and then
saying.
it just pushes the MagSafe off if
Yeah.
you set it down on the edge of your legs.
Yeah.
So with the
That's
90
fair.
degree, it can actually just like you can pick up the computer and move it forward and backward. You're a lot less likely to pull the MagSafe out.
That's probably when people at that generation too is when people actually use laptops on their laps
Right.
as well. I
Yep.
think a lot of people moved to desks and they went to this. But I am curious as to how strong the magnet is.
Yeah.
They might have made it a little bit stronger than the last MagSafe, at least on the up and down portion,
hmm
because like pulling it out straight up also like obviously magnets are going to be stronger that
Yeah.
way, but like the up or the
Yeah.
down
And
kind of
if
thing.
you look at the MagSafe on this, it is kind of it's now very flat and
Yeah.
thin, which I think is the second generation MagSafe anyways. That was what they changed to after my old MacBook Air. Because they did have a couple different MagSafe style ports for the
Hmm.
MacBooks. So
Yes.
the newest before this, the newest generation MagSafe was this thin style, and in my mind, it would be easier for it to pop out up and down because it is thinner. Whereas like the one I just showed, it's more of a rectangle that's a little bit taller. The ratios are closer to square,
Hmm.
so it's gonna have more pulling resistance those ways.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
we'll see. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I would think they
I
would do a lot of R&D bringing back MagSafe so that they
I
don't mess it
haven't
up.
I haven't encountered things like in least in recent years. Their software can be rough at times, but I haven't encountered hardware related things that fail or that are just bad.
Yeah,
Like in a long time. Mainly because like all their laptops just had USB-C and there's nothing really to fail there.
right.
Um And if it does fail, you can always bring it back. I know that some of the MacBook Airs had weird display issues. Like if you, and okay, I will say their keyboard was bad. I'll throw that out there. Like their butterfly keyboard was just awful.
Yep.
So now they've gone away from that.
Thank goodness.
um, yeah.
So we've got the
Um,
MagSafe.
yep.
We've got 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports.
Yep.
Which is awesome. 2 on the MagSafe side, 1 on the other. And you can also use those for charging. So if you dock up with a Thunderbolt port, it will also charge the laptop, which is excellent. They've got HDMI, like we talked about, with its massive display outs. They've got a micro SD card slot now, which I think for
awesome.
creators is like stupid to not have. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, not a lot of laptops have it. Mac was the one that had it for so long, got rid of it, and now we're bringing it back.
it's stupid not to have it. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
To be completely fair on the SD card, I think it is very welcome, but I think a lot of creatives that can afford the pimped out version of this laptop already have like an SSD for a lot of their stuff, like their monitor and their stuff for their camera if they're doing a lot of that stuff. But for like things like audio and just literally transferring from your camera or whatever, the way you do it, it's easier on the go, which is kind of what this is for. It's for movement. It's mobile, right?
You don't want to have to bring a bunch of dongles just to get stuff off your camera. So that's really cool.
But the thing is, if you're a Mac user, you already have the dongles now.
Wow.
Because you were on that for a while. You already have all the USB-C dongles. Yeah.
And then the last but not least port that we have is the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which is great because it's a headphone jack. I like to see that an Apple product still. Also, it is it comes with support for high impedance audio devices. So instead of
see how that is.
Yeah, instead of needing a separate amplifier for your high quality headphones, you can just you can just use the MacBook. Just plug it right in. Like,
really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It got a little thicker, but like that's not it's fine. Like I think what they did is they're just like, yeah, this thing needs to be cool and we're just gonna put monster CPUs in it. So we're gonna put like some feet on there that look
heavier,
but also
it weighs more, it's larger, like it's for pros. It's not supposed to be the thinnest laptop ever. Like
no.
I think it's great that the MacBook Air can fit into that niche, which it's not even niche, but it's just, you know, people wanting really thin laptops that don't weigh a lot, but the battery lasts forever. That's awesome. I love my MacBook Air. But if I'm buying a laptop for performance, I want it to be a little chunky.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think it's the triangle of like laptops in general. It's like portability, battery, and performance, right? So you can only have 2, really. Is the thing, is that because it's chunkier, you don't get the portability as well. It's still good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's like it's not going to be as good as an Air, and the Air is not going to be as performant as the Pro. Like, it is what it is that way.
Yeah.
Something to note too. The HDMI port is not 2.1. There is a reason for this though. They reached their maximum bus speed on the board, because I believe HDMI 2.1 can it delivers up to 48 gigabytes or gigabits per second. I think it's gigabytes per second throughput speed. So if you had everything plugged in, it technically couldn't service it.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest. Like if you're using the HDMI port, you're using it to like plug into like a projector or something like that. Yeah, like you don't
plug it into your TV or something.
Yeah, or if you want like the full like whatever like 144 hertz on something like that, like just use USB-C to DisplayPort. Like it'll work fine. You already have like 3 other ports that you can use. The HDMI is there for convenience.
Right. Yeah. Which I do appreciate, not just doing USB-C and making you buy another dongle. So.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. I've honestly I really like the design of it too, with the curved edges. I think it'll feel better holding it compared to the sharp edges of other MacBooks. It definitely does remind me of the older MacBook Pros. Like, do you remember the first silver MacBook Pro? It had the like polished ring.
Unibody? Was it
No.
unibody aluminum?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I don't remember. I remember the first MacBook, in 2006, I believe. Let's see. Oh, it almost looks like a PowerBook.
Yep.
2006. Yep. Yep. I see it here right now.
Yeah. So
Why is there a port in the front? Why is it under
let me
the
see.
trackpad? What in the world? Is that a port? I don't know. Oh, there's a CD drive there, and then there's the middle one. I don't know what that is though. I'm just on the wiki.
So that's not a port. That's the lock button for the screen.
the
so
thing
to-
like right under the trackpad.
Yep. So to open it, you had to push that and open.
Oh,
It
okay.
hinged locked down into the front,
Okay.
so your laptop
Okay.
couldn't open up.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, I had one of these things and it rocked.
You did?
Yes,
Wow.
I did. Yeah, it was cool. I think this is the first thing that I was ever I was ever able to play any actual games on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It would struggle to run the first Portal, but it ran it.
Yeah,
It did.
that game also came out in 2006.
Yep, it ran
believe,
Portal.
yeah.
Which then, when I upgraded to my 2011 MacBook Pro or MacBook Air, it was like, this is insane. Like, this thing's so fast because it was coming from a Core 2 Duo.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But yeah, it kind of
Wow.
reminds me of the styling of this one. If you look at the edges of it, they're a little more smoothed out. It's gonna feel more like this did in your hands.
So that's the thing that I'm actually curious about, because like all the MacBooks I've dealt with previously have like more of a curved back, like lid, I guess, on the Apple logo side. This one's flat. At least from the pictures that I'm seeing. If you go to the MacBook Pro 1416 specs on the dock, it's
Flat
flat.
on
Like
which
the top
part?
is flat on the top.
Oh, you mean the actual surface
The
of the
lid.
lid? So like when you close the
lid.
laptop, that
Yeah,
part.
yeah, it's flat.
Yeah. Interesting. Which again, the 2006 MacBook Pro was also flat. It's honestly just like a refresh of that style, is what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks, that's like I said, like they're going back in time. Like
Yeah.
it looks very interesting that way.
I
The
wonder
other
if-
thing I'm very curious about, and I have slight concerns about, is the fact that oh, you're sharing your screen there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. It's not gonna do it for me. I guess I can turn my video off or my camera off, and then be able to see.
Yeah. There we
Okay.
go. Okay.
See now, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. So that, if you can see that.
It's this. You are totally right.
It's
is
exactly
like
this.
that. Oh well, no, that's still curved though. Like on the edges, it's still curved.
What do you mean?
So you see how the edge rounds out
Yeah.
off the side? Yeah, that doesn't happen with this one.
Yeah, it does.
Not on the top. Not really. It's like right to the edge. I'm not saying it's
no,
jacked.
that's true. That's true. It is.
Yeah.
It is a little tighter.
Yeah. Again, that's a small gripe. It was just interesting to me to see.
Like,
And now that you bring it up, it's definitely like that old MacBook.
yep.
I am also curious about the typing experience and how that's going to be, being that the bottom is so much thicker now than the other one. So you have like, I'm just curious how it's going to be on your wrist when you're typing on it, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the feet are cool. I like them.
I think they're fine.
I think they're gonna be better than the rubber dots. That we got.
Yeah, if they're not glued on, I will be happy. I think they look kind of
Those
silly,
boys.
but I shouldn't say that's, yeah, right. I think they look kind of silly, but I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I just think they look quirky, I guess. I don't know what word I'd use for it. And yeah, I don't know. It looks like they put them on there because they needed to raise it high enough and they needed to make it Apple-y, but that is not a downside whatsoever.
No. Yeah, no, I
I'm-
honestly love it. I love the black backdrop for the keyboard too. I'm down for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then another thing we didn't talk about. They got rid of the touch bar.
Yep.
Thank goodness.
Full size function row now.
The only thing I use the touch bar for is for volume and for brightness, and brightness barely ever. Volume consistently, yes, but you have to tap and then you have to like scroll up and down.
Yeah.
That was fine as you wanted to get a good volume level, but you can just just
Use
tap,
the volume
just
key.
tap, just tap to what you
Yep.
want. Oh, I didn't notice this too. Do you see the arrow keys? They went back to the MacBook Air style
Oh
ones from
yeah.
a little bit ago too.
Yep.
It's not like squinched. It's
Hmm.
actually like correct.
Yeah. And top right, it looks like, is that a Touch ID?
Yep. That's on newer MacBooks though.
That's cool.
Has been for a little bit. Actually, that's cool too because if you have like two users for the MacBook, all they have to do is if you're signed in on that user account, you just use Touch ID and it'll bring you to the other user account.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of
super
cool. That's
cool.
something they've had for a little bit, but it's cool.
So
Anyways, we sound like what's that?
I was just gonna say, so pricing for these guys though. I know we touched on
Mhm.
it a little bit, but like if you want a base model M1 Pro with 16 gigs of memory, a terabyte solid state drive, you're looking at $2,500.
So that's the thing. The actual base model for this machine, this gives you the M1 Pro 8-core CPU and 14-core GPU.
That's right. That's right. You get
With
the slim down version.
16 gigs of memory and 512 gig SSD. That
Mm,
brings you at about 2K. So that
gotcha.
if you need if that's all machine you need, then get it. Because that's the thing. There's not there is a better bang for your buck in here, but if it's not what you need, then don't get it.
Yeah.
Like that's well, I guess want because it really depends on what you value. I think that's a better term.
Well,
Like
it
what
could
you
be,
value in it.
yeah, if you need a level of power to do certain tasks, but you need to be portable, then you might need the mid range with the M1 Max 10 core
Mhm.
24 core GPU. You might not need the 32 core GPU for an extra $200, but maybe the entry level M1 Max is what's going to fit your
Mhm.
use case.
Yeah, and that's really just it. Like it's one of those things where it depends on your use case. Like I would actually consider mid-range the higher end Pro with 32 gigs of memory and a terabyte SSD because that's about 2,900. With that said, I do agree with you because this is one that I'm looking at is for only $200 more, you're getting double the memory bandwidth and more displays that you're able to put onto there. Um, for $200 basically. Like
For the
it's not that
Max.
much more. Yeah, for the Max over the
Yeah.
Pro.
Hmm.
Like if you're just there, you get basically not double the GPU cores, but you get enough more GPU cores off of that. That's the only thing that changes from the Max to the or from the Pro to the Max is the amount of GPU cores you get, the memory bandwidth that you have, and the amount of displays that you can throughput and stuff like that,
Hmm.
basically. But yeah, so like if you're going unfortunately for this laptop, it can get up to about like $6,500 if you go max everything.
On the
Um,
16 inch.
yes,
Yeah.
like the 14-inch gets up to just under 6K. Um, the most of the money though, I will say, like a good quarter of or a third of it comes from the SSD
Which
because
is
they're charging.
insane.
It's too much. It's too much money. I know it's PCIe Gen 4, but for an 8 terabyte SSD, you're paying over the 1 terabyte, you're paying an extra $2,200 for an 8 terabyte SSD.
You're paying another MacBook on top of it.
It's really bad. So the one that I'm looking at currently it's the 14-inch just because I really like that form factor. I don't know the last time, if ever, Apple has done a 14-inch laptop. It's always been 13 and 15.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's basically that's what it's been. So I'm doing the 14-inch. I'm thinking the kind of what I said for the $200 more, the M1 Max, just with the 24 core GPU,
Mm-hmm.
32 gigs of memory, 1 terabyte SSD.
Yep.
So that's kind of the spec that I'm looking at right now at doing because I feel like 32 gigs is going to be enough for future proofing. I know it's a tough word to use in this industry because nothing is future proofed. But with that said, for my tasks, it probably will be
Yep.
because I'm not using it for production level stuff. This will be like a MacBook that I keep for like 8 years and then
Right.
resist getting rid of because it's still working.
Yep. You're not
It's
trying
kind of
to
what I'm
edit
looking for.
8K video on it.
No, And that's the thing, is that this laptop, while it is for pros, it can be for people who just want a laptop that's probably going to last a while. Only time will tell, really, on this guy. But judging from Apple's past on the 15-inch ones, granted that was a tried and true design, it's one that, like, they went back to that style. I have to assume that this one is also going to last quite a bit of time.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And 32 gigs of memory. So the reason why I'm doing that instead of 64, like, basically, I don't use in my common tasks more than 16 gigs. And if I really need like VRAM for something, I don't think I'd use more than 16 gigs. That's kind of where I'm at on that, especially when applications get bigger and bigger. If I do start working in Xcode and that kind of thing, it's good to have that RAM and such. But there's that to consider. The only thing I might upgrade, and I'm probably not going to, honestly, is the SSD. 1 terabyte is really nice to have. A 512 for me, I can't do anymore. I think 1 terabyte is kind of where I'm at as far as my storage needs. If I do start working with really high amount of video, 2 terabytes would be the highest I would go. But with that said, just get an external SSD and you're going to be paying a lot less money for a 1 terabyte external SSD if you really need it.
Right, yeah, you could get a Thunderbolt external SSD enclosure, and if you're editing massive amounts of video, you just plug into your backup and that's it.
Yep.
Like,
that's what it is.
Yeah, no reason you need to have more than 1 terabyte for our use case. No reason you need more than that on board.
So that spec then is basically $3,100 is what the spec is. So it's basically what you're doing is over the bottom spec for a third more in price. You're getting double the bandwidth. You're getting what is that? A quarter more GPU. You're getting double the RAM and double the storage space for a third more in price.
More than a quarter more of the GPU.
Well, it's from... Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's only
12 core on the bottom? What's the bottom mount GPU? I said it, but now I forget what I said. It is a 14 core. Yeah. So you're at almost double. You're at almost double the GPU for about a third more in price, basically, give or take a little bit, kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm looking at getting. What do you have any thoughts behind that? I've thought about it for a little bit, so I'm just curious if you have any thoughts as to. I understand there's the value proposition, which is very subjective based on what you're getting. But I'm curious on what you think like the best bang for buck configuration is.
I mean, honestly, like I'm looking here on the webpage too, and I feel like that extra $200 to go from the Pro to the Max is worth it. Not only bandwidth, but also the extra GPU cores, getting 8 extra GPU cores. So
for like less than 6% increase in price.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. And then again, you're locked at 32 gigs minimum memory with the M1 Max, so that's what it is. I don't think it's worth it to upgrade the storage. So, yeah, $3,100 seems like it's the
the middle ground option. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't see that. I don't see the extra 8 cores of the next level Max really coming in to play for our use cases.
Yeah, our use cases, exactly, because that's really what it comes down to, is use cases. Like if you're like a professional videographer and you make a lot of money from what you do and you need a machine that's going to need to work mobily, you're going to get the maxed out version and you're going to be able to pay for it like no problem that way. Yep. Like that's just what's going to happen.
It's a write-off.
It's a tool. It's a write-off, and it's a tool for you. It is really a tool. Like for us, it's a machine that we're going to have for years. Not to say you're going to get one, but like if we were to buy this, like it's a machine we're going to have for years and years and years, hopefully. That just basically won't break, because I mean my grandma had her the 2016 MacBook, the what's the plastic they use on that, the white plastic, I forgot what it was called, but basically like the white plastic MacBook, she had that for 10 years, and then I just finally tried going on it. Ooh, it's rough. That thing had I think 2 gigs of RAM, dual core processor, which is great, having more than one core, and I want to say it was 128 gigs of storage, which was a lot for the time based on what you had. But I was just like literally logging in took 4-5 minutes to
Dang.
log in because it was running like uh, Sierra, I think. I think it got to Sierra. I think Catalina was the cutoff for 64-bit processing. I think it got to Sierra because yours
Yeah.
can't get to Catalina, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
But 2011, that's 10 years. It's a
You're at 10 years
10-year-old.
now, and you're still using. All you have done really is like clean out and you replace the battery, right?
Yep. Replace the battery. It costs like $60.
And that's an Air. That's a MacBook Air. That thing didn't have power to begin with.
No. It's honestly insane how good this works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've put this laptop through the absolute ringer. I've took it to different countries. I've spilled ice cream on it. Like,
nice.
No, it's a solid
That's awesome.
machine.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the MacBooks. Really, really cool. We sound like Apple fanboys, but honestly, Apple going back to their usual way of doing things. A lot of even Windows users would go to MacBooks only when it was on 64-bit or x86 processors to just install Boot Camp on it and then just install Windows because they like the hardware.
Yep.
And you can't do that now, but it's good hardware. Like, it's really cool to talk about the hardware of it. I know we're the hardware hams, but like just the hardware of it is awesome, and it's really cool to see Apple actually like listening to their customers again.
I think that's a good pivot point to head to our next topic, which is completely unhardware related.
Oh yeah, it's very
completely
software. Entirely
online.
Software.
Yep. So let's talk about the Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack. So
take it away.
Yes, let's get right into it. So I know we mentioned it last time. Yeah, more ham related, exactly. I know we mentioned it last time, but Rhodey, will you stop chewing on my chair? That'd be sweet. I appreciate it. Thank you.
She needs to munch.
She does need to munch. So Nintendo Switch Online, base price, and let me pull this up so I don't mince my words. But
it's $50 for the single, or $49.99. Or are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about the normal one.
Yeah, the normal one is $19.99, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
For a single plan. So that's and let's just talk about it as yearly plans cost, because if you're not buying a yearly plan, then you're not really that invested in the service anyways, because it's like less than half the price to buy the yearly plan. So individual membership of base Nintendo Switch Online is $19.99. For the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack is $49.99. So that's a $30 price jump. But with that, you get all of the N64 games they have currently available.
Eight games.
8 games. I believe 3 of them being made to play online now. So
Dr. Mario,
Mario Kart 64,
and Star Fox.
Yeah. So
yeah,
modified retro games to play online through an online service. Super cool. And then also Sega Genesis, and 63 games. Yeah. So you get Sega Genesis games, you get this
fair point, yeah.
64 games, and they are updating that library as well, which I would assume that they're going to continue to update that library, but we'll see. You also get the Animal Crossing DLC, which I have mixed feelings about. I think it's really weird of them to include that in this bundle, because it's like, what if you don't have the game? You're assuming that $25 expansion pack is part of the price increase. Obviously, if it's a $30 price increase, it just seems like they're forcing you to buy something that you might not even be able to use without spending an extra $60, maybe a game that you're not interested in. Um, so that's kind of weird. I could see them. I feel like it would have been better and more well received if they would have said we are including DLCs or certain DLCs in with this membership, starting with Animal Crossing, because then it's like, okay, you're assuming that at some point they're going to release new DLCs and include them in with your membership, which they still might do, and I could see that being something that they do. But I think it's weird for them to not word it like that and to just say, yeah, you get Animal Crossing DLC.
So, yes, Nintendo is notoriously bad with communication.
Yes.
Really, really bad. And that's not even from even like a language standpoint. Like communicating to your consumer. Like
Mhm.
it's really, really bad. Like they're never upfront. They're always calculated in what they tell you. That's
Yep.
kind of been Nintendo's MO. Um I think it is a little weird that they didn't say. Did they? Well, okay. I actually don't know because I don't remember. Did they say future DLCs are going to be included with this, or is it an assumption?
It's just an assumption. It's more of a hopeful expectation, really, that they
I
would
would I would
include more.
assume
Yeah.
as well with you that if they include this one Animal Crossing DLC for a yearly plan that's going to be $50 every year,
Mm-hmm.
that they would also include other DLCs. Now that I'm thinking about it, what I think might happen, it'd be weird for it to happen, but it might happen, is that they include one DLC that comes out for one of their main IPs a year,
Right.
including in that plan.
Yes. Absolutely.
Like maybe next year it's the Hyrule Warriors DLC, like the Age of Calamity DLC that's coming out. Like it could be that. It could be like you get a DLC a year kind of thing, that has a lot of content packed into
Yeah.
it.
But again, like you
Um,
said, it's the lack of communication of not saying a yearly DLC pack.
Yeah, and
You know?
honest, like as far as the cost increase goes, we'll just kind of talk about the single plan because the family plan's kind of where it's at. But I mean, not everybody has all the 8 people to make a family plan.
Right.
Like that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because if you have 8 people, you're each paying $10. It's
Yep.
fantastic. But the single plan, because that's the most structured one to look at, because it is a $30 increase for the single plan.
Also, I just noticed you can only get the NSO plan plus expansion pack in a yearly format. There
Yeah.
is no 1 month trial. There's no 3 month trial. You buy the 12 months.
Did you know that you can only buy the N64 controller if you're part of Nintendo Switch Online?
Really? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like because that was the same thing with the NES and SNES controllers though too, wasn't it?
but you don't need the expansion pass. You just need to be part of Nintendo Switch Online.
Right. Yeah. Because they've always had their special club items in the
Mhm.
Nintendo club,
Oh, is it there?
the
Yeah.
whatever they call it, where you can buy certain merch and all that stuff.
Mm-mm.
That's how they've released like I think they've done some like little Game and Watch uh, portable things too that were only
Yeah.
available for club members.
Yeah.
So
So I think the best way to do this is to play a few different characters or a few different sides as
mhm.
to like what kind of consumer you are. So like if you're the consumer, this is kind of the easiest way to do. If you're the consumer that's sold your consoles, you've upgraded to each new console, you don't have any of the old ones,
Yep.
or you've always heard, "Oh, Mario Kart 64 is fun. Oh, I've heard Zelda Ocarina of Time is the greatest game ever made."
Right.
This is a good deal because if in my mind I remember watching a video today, the Austin John Plays, I think is his name. Really good videos. He was bringing out the point that it's $10 on the Wii U store to get these games, and if you
Yeah.
had a Wii, that's also the same thing. So I feel
ten
valuing
dollars
each of these
per.
games. I know, yeah,
Yeah.
$10 per. I feel like valuing these games at $10 per is fair because on the used market they are more. I know they're old games, but it is what it is. I feel like valuing at $10.
Hmm.
If you are that person and you at least and you don't have Animal Crossing, let's say that first two is a thing. If you don't have Animal Crossing and you find 3 of these games worth playing, it's worth it. I
Mhm.
think, anyways. And that is really dependent on what you value. Like, that's just really what it is. If you want to
Yeah.
play 3 of these games, you're at $50 yearly with them adding more. That being said, in my opinion, you shouldn't pay for things that don't exist yet because you don't know when it's going to get there. You are paying for a product that exists currently. That's really the short of it.
Right.
That like from a financial standpoint, you're paying for what is there. So what you're paying for right now when it launches is you're paying for Animal Crossing DLC. You may or may not have it, and you're paying for these 8 games for basically $30. If you like all 8 of them, then it's definitely worth it. If you like all
8
8 of them.
games plus Sega.
Yes, sorry, I keep focusing on N64. I was not a Sega person, so like I don't know a lot of the Sega games, but they are there. Yes.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind, before we go on to the different scenarios that you might have in buying this, nobody said a word when they gave everyone free NES and SNES games.
Right? Yeah.
Nobody said
That's
anything.
true.
Nobody said a word. No price increase, no nothing. Now when
It was
N64
just
games
a,
and DLC
here
gets
you go.
added, oh, it's so expensive. Like, what? Like, okay. It's not. It is a big increase because it is over double. I get that. But maybe it's paying for the NES and SNES games that came up too. Then they keep adding and they're like, ooh, we should have charged for that or something like that. Like as they add them.
Uh-huh.
Because that's the thing is that they're adding in the port. Something to note too. Actually, hold on. Let me get through the scenarios first, and then we can kind of go through that. So, other scenario is you have Animal Crossing and you like playing it, and actually in that scenario, if you have Animal Crossing and you like playing it, and you might even just play one DLC or not DLC, if you play one of the N64 games or Sega Genesis games, worth it. I feel like that's worth it. Like just for because you're paying $5 over because the Animal Crossing DLC is $25. So you're paying $5 extra a year for N64 games. I
Yeah.
think that's worth it entirely. Where I don't think it will be worth it is if you still have all the old consoles. You still have these things that play well. There is another side to that, but if you still have these things and you have like a CRT TV to play it on and you have all this stuff, obviously this isn't going to be worth it because you already have the original hardware.
So you're talking like if you're an Anthony.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, it just won't be worth it necessarily. That being said, and this goes along with the point that I was going to bring out, some emulated games are bad.
Mhm.
If you're talking about emulation, if you're talking about downloading the ROM, if you're talking about the technically illegal way of doing things, some ROMs do not work well. One being Paper Mario does not work well. Mario Sunshine is another one. I know it's a GameCube game, but like Mario
Yeah.
Sunshine is another ROM does not work very well in Dolphin. So it's like you are getting something that is by Nintendo. It's going to work because they did it. Not to mention, save states are fantastic,
Yep.
especially for games like Paper Mario. Like, save states are great. I know they're in emulators too. Like, that makes sense. But, like, you are getting a lot, in my opinion, you're getting a lot of value for the $30 based on the things that you're getting.
Yep.
And addressing the elephant in the room too, this is kind of my last point on this. It's portable. You can be on the bus. You can be on a plane eventually.
Could be
You
on
can
a
be
train.
yeah, you know, you can be somewhere and playing these N64 games portably, and then dock it to your TV and also play it on the TV. I
Mhm.
think, in my mind, the biggest selling point for these N64 and Sega Genesis games is the fact that it's on the Switch. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that as clearly because there's a lot of versatility when it comes to that.
It's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the best way to play your Sega Genesis and N64 games portably. The best.
I would say it's the most convenient way.
Yes. Okay.
It's the
The
most
best
convenient way.
the best legal way to play.
Right. Because best, unfortunately, is subjective. But
Yes.
I would say, objectively, this is the most convenient way.
Mhm.
You pay $30 and you get all these games, plus more that they're adding.
Right.
Like, that is something that you can't necessarily judge because it's not here yet.
And
but
you get the online versions, which other than hacked ROMs this is
Yeah.
the only legal way
This is the only legal
that
way.
you are able to play Mario Kart 64 with your friends. Like, online,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, it's really, really cool.
I'm stoked for that.
I feel like we're both just corporate shills for this.
Okay, but I mean,
this-
it's seeing its value to you, and for
Yeah.
me, it has value based on the modifications they've done to the older games. Like you said, the save states. Playing Super Metroid on the Switch was like incredible because if I got wrecked on a boss, I could rewind back to where I started and have the same full health and items and everything without dying, having to go grind enemies to get all your stuff back to go re-challenge the boss. Like, it was just a massive, massive quality of life upgrade being able to play retro games on there. And not to mention seamless use of newer Nintendo hardware like the Pro Controller and handheld or whatever. Like, you're able to play these games in the newest iteration of their hardware.
Right, and like they're also selling the N64 controller, which I pray comes with Rumble. It's $50. It needs to come with things that are worth $50.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I really hope this is a thing. I don't think it's a thing now because everything is money based and it's not based on what developers think is cool. Is them putting the pack on the back of the N64, not a memory card, but some kind of attachment that's cool.
Uh-huh.
Like a cool one that I can think of is, especially with all the retro stuff they're putting out there, Game Boy Color games to put in there. I know they already had them for Pokemon Stadium. Like, that's definitely been a thing because you would able to transfer save data. But also, what I didn't know when watching one of Awesome John's videos is that you can play the games on N64 when you got to a certain level in Pokemon Stadium. And you could speed it up. You could speed up the game on N64.
What?
Up to 3 times.
Are you serious?
As you unlock different things. Yes, you would just put the game card. What you would do is you'd have another controller like in Player 4. You put the game in, and then you'd play on the normal N64 controller. And you could play the game at like 2 and 3 times the speed.
Little did they know that
time.
Nintendo had created the best modification to Pokemon in the history of Pokemon, and they never used it again.
So that's kind of my point, is that it's one of those things where it's not Pokemon in this sense, and this is a slight rant here. It's like it's not made for people who have already played it. It is meant for new players.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Pokemon is made for, which is a little bit irritating, but I get it. Because of money. That's really it. It's because of money. And that's the kind of downfall of it. But like back in the day, developers were like, yeah, this is cool. We're going to do this. And then they did it. And they made money off of it. But now it's like Nintendo's in this stance of like, oh, well, we did it before and it worked. So let's just do the exact same thing again. One caveat in Pokemon related terms is Legends Arceus. I think they're really going in a cool direction with that. But I mean, I think Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is just a let's go play Eevee on is basically a repeat of that in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the Nintendo Switch, at least my thoughts on Nintendo Switch Online. I think it's cool value, but you have to value what's there. I don't think for myself it's like not worth it based on what I want to do with it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because I mean, Katie's going to want to play Animal Crossing. Again, for me, that's entirely going to be worth it. Caitlin's going to want to play Animal Crossing. It's going to be worth it. Like, that's just what it is.
Caitlin's going to want to play Ocarina of Time. It's going to be worth it.
Yep. And that's the thing. So this is not a it's worth it or not question. Also, no question is if it's worth it or not. It's based on what you value. I'm probably going to buy a $3,000 laptop. For most people, they'd be like, you're insane. Why are you doing that? That's not worth it.
Right.
For me, it is.
It's
like,
subjective.
That's just,
yeah.
It's completely subjective. Like, because now that's your opinion that you're pushing onto me and saying, hey, you shouldn't buy that because it's not worth it. It's like, but it's worth
my
it to me, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's my opinion. Like, it's just what it is.
Yep.
So yeah, it's funny we're talking about worth it and cost of things a lot of this stream.
Yep. Well,
Um,
let's segue this right on over to the new Pokemon games coming out soon,
mhm.
and let's get the 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 thoughts fresh from the Dylan.
Fresh from the Dylan.
Hmm.
Okay. So, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. From what I've seen a lot of videos that are just very corporate and very much like, this is great. This will be a great entry for new players. This will be great. Like, it'll be all these things. A lot of the stuff they added, like being able to just do HMs from anywhere, because, okay, Diamond and Pearl had 8 HMs and it was a nightmare to like have basically 2 Pokemon dedicated to HMs.
Yeah.
Okay, that aside, I'm glad they're changing that. The Pokemon box from anywhere is nice to have. I personally will probably just use it for looking at my Pokemon rather than just putting them in my party for the
Hmm.
most part, because like I do like the challenge of a few things, but I also like to see what I have. And I don't like going back to the Pokemon Center to see what I have. Us playing
Yep.
like Poke MMO right now, like it's kind of a pain to have to go to the Pokemon Center to just see what we have and then go somewhere else. Maybe you
Yep.
can. I don't know. We're kind of new to it. But there's some cool things with it. There's also some things that I kind of dislike, um, because games have gotten easier over time. There are games that are meant to be hard, but games in general have gotten easier.
Yeah.
And from one perspective, it's because I just want to go home, I want to play a game, and I don't want to have to like grind to like get to a certain point. I just want to relax. That's a fair point. That's a completely fair point of wanting to do that. But in this case, this is a Diamond and Pearl remake, and they're staying true to the old titles.
Right.
However, my biggest problem with this game is going to be how easy it is. Not to say that it needs to be difficult. There are games out there, Pokemon games, that are difficult if you want to play them. There's some like fan made games all over the place. I am a very not a big fan of shared experience. And now let me explain. I'm fine with it. Like experience share on its own should have been an item that you get like mid game. It should not have been like way later in the game that you get in Pokemon in general.
Right.
But what I don't like is shared experience that you cannot turn off. I get the not grinding thing and I get that sort of thing, but if you have like the option to turn off autosave, I feel like you need to have the option to turn off experience share. Because for one thing, from a competitive standpoint, EV training is a nightmare. You need somebody who's fully EV trained because otherwise everyone's getting that EV when you're battling. So
Right.
literally, what's happening is like how the Pokemon games work is like whoever's battling and subsequently whoever has experience share are getting the same EVs of what Pokemon you defeat. So that makes the game a little bit harder as you're grinding up into the higher levels because not all your EVs are trained up all the way. With global experience share, after like 500 battles, not even 500 battles, because some Pokemon give 2 EVs. After let's say like 300 battles, maybe 200 battles, you're fully trained. Your whole team is trained.
Hmm.
And that battles in defeated Pokemon, not in like trainer battles, because obviously
Right.
there's not that many trainers. But in defeated Pokemon, your whole team is trained.
Hmm.
In my mind, that's way too easy. And also for Diamond and Pearl, they bridged the gap between the 8th gym and the Elite Four. Cynthia was supposed to be the biggest boss in the game. That was supposed to be the one that was feared
Right.
because you were at a really low level when you're fighting her because you didn't know you had to grind. And then you got there, you're like, crap, I'm going to die. The challenge was there on purpose. You're able to beat it at a lower level than her if you plan things out correctly. Like,
Hmm.
it can happen. What I don't like is the fact that they bridged that gap and now you're just going to just walk through everything.
Yeah.
That's my biggest complaint. I think the one thing that will solve it for me personally is I get bridging the gap between that and not making her as big of a boss. Like, okay, I get it. It's kind of dumb, but I can understand it.
Yeah.
I don't like you can't turn off experience share, or at least from what we've seen right now, you can. And Sword and Shield you couldn't, and it was a big turnoff for me. Like, obviously, I got the game, and I'm that person that's going to complain about something and still buy it.
Yep.
But it is an annoyance at
Yeah.
the very least.
Well, and when you see them doing it again, you're like, come on, like, why can't we fix this? You
Yeah.
know?
With that in mind, I fully believe this is the reason why they split the two games apart, this and Legends Arceus, because Legends Arceus, I am hopeful, is going to be games for more hardcore players, like with, I guess, hardcore Pokemon players, because they're making it a lot like Monster Hunter, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And going into that. So I think the biggest gripe I have with it, and again, like Katie and I bought the dual pack, we're gonna play it together because it is fun.
Yeah.
But just because it's fun and you buy it doesn't mean you can't criticize it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it couldn't be
oh,
better.
yeah, like it doesn't mean like somebody comes up to you, it's like, well, put your money where your mouth is if you don't like it. And I'm like, yeah, but there's parts that I do like about it. Obviously, a company's not gonna listen to it, but like I can have like gripes.
Just because something is overwhelmingly positive doesn't mean it's perfect. So it's the things that are negative about it that is unfortunate when it's something that could be easily addressed with relatively low negative consequences. You know, like
Yeah.
what do
Yeah,
they have
right.
to lose from putting an option in the settings to turn off shared experience? Nothing.
Nothing. They literally have nothing to lose by doing that. Yeah. I don't know. I think they tried it with Sword and Shield because you were able to turn it off. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in 6 and 7. I believe you're able to turn it off and do your own thing. And then in 8 they forced the shared experience.
There was options to turn shared experience on and off in 6 and 7.
I believe so. I believe so.
I never played those
I
regions, so
I know in 6 absolutely, because I did turn it off. I just don't know in 7 if you could. I don't remember.
Yeah.
That being said, too, I think they have done a good job of balancing it when everyone gets experience. Like that makes sense to me. But with shared experience turned off, I do feel like there is an imbalance because shared experience is a thing. So I think that's probably why they keep it on, is because I don't know if they have a good way of balancing when you get experience and when your whole team does necessarily. Because they did change the way experience is gained in Gen 6.
Really?
Yeah. They changed the math values.
Mm.
Gen 6 was stupid easy to get experience. I was like level 70. I had like a level 70 Greninja, and it was like I was battling level 50s, and it was still like it was just like, so
Dang.
I could battle for probably like an hour and get them all to 100. Like it was the easiest thing in the world.
Wow.
And then they toned it down in 7, which was good. And then in 8, I think they balanced it out a little bit more. But I remember in 6 just having like one Pokemon, it was not balanced, and so I turned it back on because it was like, I'm gonna sit here forever because like this just isn't working in the way that I'm used to in Gen 4 and 5.
So like instead of shared experience just splitting the total experience between all your Pokemon, when you turn that off, you were still only getting a fraction for the one that was actually doing the battling?
Not that much of a fraction, but from what I know, you're not getting the full amount that everyone else was getting when you defeat a Pokemon. Anyways, that's more of a Dylan might be wrong kind of thing as far as this goes, but that's what it felt like, at least when I turned it off. Because I played plenty of games that just have it from the main one. Plenty of games. But Gen 6 felt weird a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think the game's going to be good. Talking about remakes of Diamond and Pearl. The thing I just don't like is that it's a remake, but then it's still made for kids. It's not made for people who
played it
have
originally.
played the games already.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't feel like that. I think it is a cool revamped version of it, but it might be one of those things where, like, this is the casual game, that Pokemon game that you want to play, and then Legends Arceus is more of the hardcore story mode that you play.
Yeah. It definitely is unfortunate because it feels like a fan disservice because, like, if you think about the age group of people that would have played Diamond and Pearl when they were new, and, like, if those people were teenagers, you know, probably the largest demographic of people that initially got DSs and stuff, then those people are now my age and would probably want a little bit more out of their remake than, you know, Let's Go Pikachu.
Yeah, and I think it will be a little bit more difficult than that. That's like we're talking about a game we haven't played yet too, as the other side of the coin. But I do agree, like, it needs to be one of those things where it doesn't need to be hard. It just needs to feel the same, I think. I think what they need to do, and hopefully they successfully do it, they need to make it feel the same as when you first played it as a kid.
Yeah.
And I feel like with the experience share in particular, I get the other quality of life improvements that are added. But with the experience share in particular, I think you do lose a bit of that. Though, now that I'm thinking about it too, people have rose-colored glasses, so they might forget about the grinding that is needed for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Nintendo isn't smart with this. I get it, but like from a ultra fan like standpoint, it's like just do better. At least for yeah. Like do better a little bit. They
Uh-huh.
have said a lot about it, but they're also very secretive about the things that they haven't said about it. And it's like just settings things. Let us know what the settings are. Just let us know. Like let us know if you can turn it off. Like
Right.
it's those little things that fans actually like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? There's a lot of speculation that goes out. There's a lot of people that start making theories upon things, which is fine. And I think people do like to do that. But I think they like to do it with games like Legends Arceus because that game is new. There's new things to it. A
Yep.
brand new Pokemon game. I get it. But for a remake, they want to know the facts about it. They want
Yeah.
to know if it's going to feel like a remake. They want to know if they're going to want to buy it in that way. I think that's more important for remakes and less important for new games.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see them at some point do a remake or something with a hard mode on it, which just
Yeah.
increases the levels of trainers in wild Pokemon. Like they don't have to change anything else, but just make it a little tighter, like kind of how PokeMMO is, where
Mm-hmm.
your max level isn't that much higher than the gym.
Or the Pokemon have items and they're actually like
Right.
competent
Yep.
trainers who like switch out and use multiple potions maybe in a battle
Right.
because you're able to too. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you create trainers that are more equal to you, I feel like it's a more rewarding
Exactly.
experience.
Which again is something like they could put a little bit deeper in the settings and make it so that every 8-year-old isn't going to accidentally turn on when they start a profile. That's totally fine.
Right.
Like there's ways to get around making it still a kid game but enjoyable by people who want to play it a little more hardcore. That's why
I,
there's master mode in Zelda.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. That's why Master Quest is a thing, is because people like the hardcore mode.
Yep.
Like, and it's literally all that is a service to your fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if anything, that's like I think most of them would still buy the future games, but you're gonna get more fans to remember that those games exist and be
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, this has a hard mode. I'm gonna do that. Like
Yep.
that's gonna be fun.
Like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, I continually forget that we have it, and
Yep.
I have basically no desire to pick it back up.
Nope. The only reason why is because shiny hunting's stupid easy in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
because wild Pokemon battles just aren't a thing. So
I'm like that close to just trading it in because
yeah,
I'm never gonna play it again. You know,
yeah,
I don't want to sit
that's
on my
fair.
couch and go like this to try to catch
Yeah,
Pokemon.
yeah. No, it makes sense. I think it was a cool version of Kanto, and I think the devs did a lot of cool things, like with the ride Pokemon and everything like that. Like
Yeah,
there are a lot of cute things in it, but like it has no replayability, like at all, really, in my opinion. Anyways, I'd rather go to like the old DS games that I
and
have
it
like
has
Platinum.
minimal playability for any serious uh, Pokemon players.
That game was for the transitionary period between Pokemon Go. Like
Yep,
that's what it was, and I don't disagree with their decision to do that, but that's what it is.
yep,
And I feel like after people got that, then they got into Pokemon games. I don't see it. At least myself playing it
yeah.
again, like you're
I
saying. Yeah.
I hope that Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl is more of a transitional game from Let's Go to more classic Pokemon story games and more of that feel to take that same audience that
Mm,
they garnered
okay.
from Let's Go or from
Okay.
Pokemon Go to Let's Go to now okay this is what Pokemon actually is and kind of step up the the difficulty or
I see
the
what you're saying.
yeah the intensity
I
of it.
totally I totally get what you're saying actually. That would make a lot of sense for the transitionary period from those fans to these games.
Mm-hmm.
And um it could be one of those things where like, oh yeah, I never played Diamond and Pearl. Like I don't have a DS, I don't want to do that. So it's like, oh, there's remakes, I can do this.
Right.
So garnering that audience instead of like the remake audience kind of thing. So maybe when they do eventually remake Gen 5, it will be a little bit harder, and they'll do a little bit more in that respect.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you guys to go through the story on PokeMMO for Gen 5 because
Yep.
it's really cool.
It's been fun so far. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's really something, especially like the end sequence, to see in more of a Switch like or whatever console they have at that point format on a TV sort of deal. It's gonna be really cool. But
Yes,
yeah,
Pepsi Cat, I am a serious Pokemon player. No big deal though.
I'm kind of a Pokemon master. You know, it is what it is.
I
Like, I
may or
played
may
Gen
not
4.
may or may not have Pokemon pajamas.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna confirm more than that.
I played Platinum and went straight from Gym 8 to the like Elite 4. I think I did a slight amount of grinding, but like I beat the Elite Four in the first try. Like, if you build your team well enough, it'll be fine. Like, you're not gonna do like poorly. It's just like I said, another one of those things that just makes it a little bit easier. Maybe it's because like you don't have to plan well, and they want to make sure that you're having fun. So
Yeah,
that's not a bad thing. Making sure you're having fun is not a bad thing. I think it's just weird that it's a remake.
I think they need to make sure that more of their audience can have fun in that game.
Yep. Yep, totally makes sense. I think they're both going to be great games. I think they're just two completely different audiences, like you were saying. I think you made a great point on the transitionary from Let's Go to these new Diamond and Pearl games.
Thank you.
Yeah,
came up with that on the spot.
Yeah, that's been my entire night here.
Sweet. Well, I think we're just about up on time. We wanted to keep this stream a little bit shorter so that we don't get tired and sleepy. So
that's true. We didn't want to do that.
Yep.
Well, thanks for listening to our ramblings, everyone who decided to join in. It's been super fun. We went off a lot of specs and a lot of opinions here, but it's been a really good time.
Very many tangents. I enjoyed it.
Yep. I'm sure you did. You always enjoy my tangents, and I enjoy yours.
Perfect. Well, on that excellent note, we will catch everyone else next Wednesday when we stream some games, because we like to do that on Wednesdays. We are also extremely close to affiliate level here on Twitch, which is exciting. So just want to put that out there. No pressure, but like the follow button is kind of right down there, so you know it's there. But we just have fun chatting and getting to engage with our friends and anyone else who pops on about the things that we find interesting. So we hope you find them interesting as well.
Yeah. We also, I don't know if I actually didn't hear part of that, on YouTube. We do YouTube things. So if you want to go subscribe to us on YouTube, we made we've made a lot of tech videos, a few different series here and there. We have a lot of stuff planned out. So if you like key videos, if you like general PC hardware videos, PC enthusiasts, stuff like that, feel free to subscribe to us. Check us out on there. Watch a few of our videos. But yeah, I think that is it. You want to sign us off there, Taylor?
Yeah, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Bye.